Hey, what's up? Jeff Lerner here, and we are talking in this video about one of my favorite subjects, which is reading books, and in particular, how to discipline yourself and structure your life in such a way that you actually will read more books. If you're watching this video, a video about how to read more books, you're probably already sold on the idea that it would be good to do so. So I'm not going to try to convince you so much that you should read more books. I'm going to talk about how to actually get it done in your life. So we're talking about reading more books. Let me just say, books are amazing. So I brought out this little stack of books here just for a video about books. I just grabbed a few off my shelf, and I picked up this book on top, which is by Søren Kierkegaard, great Scandinavian existentialist, kind of a Christian existentialist philosopher. Purity of heart is to will one thing. So I just randomly open up this book. Bear in mind, I'm about to shoot a video about reading books and how to get yourself to do this thing. And it's the very first line I read. It says, "The other aspect of the reward-centered man is willing the good only out of fear of punishment. For in essence, this is the same as to will the good for the sake of the reward, to the extent that avoiding an evil is an advantage of the same sort as that of attaining a benefit." So basically, I opened right to a line about how to get yourself to do things that are good for you by creating rewards relative to fearing punishment. The section was called Barriers to Willing One Thing. It's essentially, this book is about how to get yourself to do hard things, to will yourself to pursue with singular passion and what he calls purity of heart, which is to will one thing, how to get yourself to do hard things and pursue this life that, in the modern era, it's become so fashionable to be so diverse and so, multi-aspected and have all these different things going. And, our Wednesdays are for this part of our life, and our Thursdays are for this part of our life, and our Fridays and Saturdays, the weekends, are totally other. Like, purity of heart is to will one thing. Again, this wasn't scripted. This is randomly the first book I picked up. Oh, look, here's another one. The Automatic Millionaire. Did a project with this guy, David Bach. It's basically teaching you how to, through singular focus and making one change in your life, it's a powerful one-step plan to live and finish rich. It's really rich. Finish rich. It's really powerful. I used to work with this guy. Like I said, literally one change in his life helps people finish rich. This is about purity of heart, is to will one thing. There's a consistent theme here that, again, I didn't plan a script for this video, which is that it's about focus. It's about narrowing your focus. It's about winnowing down your options. And the reality is, what's in the way of most people reading more books is all the distracting and diversionary crap that we do with our time, right? Like, that's not some big revelatory thought, but yet for most people, it's the truth that can actually move their life forward. The number one thing that most people can do to read more books is to watch less television. I was getting ready for a Facebook Live the other day, and I was looking at some stats about TV consumption. In particular, it was about sports consumption. Just sports. People watch, I think it's like 50% of the westernized population across the world, not just Western countries, but westernized, sort of like first world countries, watches 10 plus hours of sports per week on the television. Total TV consumption is like, 3 to 5 hours a day. Want to read more books? Watch less TV. That seems pretty obvious, but it's about narrowing our focus and removing distractions, removing mental distractions. Never mind video games. Video games take this to an extreme, but even television and the internet both are, and here you are watching a video on the internet and I'm knocking it, but they're of a particular quality. They're engineered to operate in the brain in a fairly exhaustive way. They stimulate a lot of the same brain centers that are the centers of addiction. And addictive behavior is exhausting behavior. It feels good in the moment, it sucks you in the moment, but it actually drains you. Not to go off on a tangent, but I have a friend who had a neurological condition that was based on some mold passing the blood-brain barrier, and it turned out that actually his participation in video games was exhausting his body's ability to fight the infection, because video games exhaust the brain. So, and it's the same, again, of television and the internet, along with video games, they exhaust the brain. If you want to read more books, unplug from digital stimulus, unplug from screens. And in particular, I'm going to suggest that the most nefarious enemy of processing good information through good old-fashioned book reading is the news. This incessant feeling and almost guilt complex that we have about the need to stay current, the need to stay up to speed. There is so much more news now than anyone could possibly retain, and we just watch it stream by us day after day, minute after minute, acting like we're retaining anything, acting like it's impacting us in any sort of a positive way, acting like it's informing our opinions or our attitudes. We're becoming so much more educated because we stared at the news feed for hours and hours. Honestly, one of the greatest things I've done in my life is to get blissfully ignorant of what the hell is going on in this world. I don't know what's going on in this world, because you know who doesn't pay my bills? This world. You know who doesn't love my kids? This world. You know who doesn't move my life forward and advance my causes? This world. You know who does? My world. I've become really, really passionate about tracking what's going on in my world, and frankly, blissfully ignorant and disinterested in what's going on in this world. And I encourage you to do the same. I'd rather know what's going on. Soren Kierkegaard's dead, and I'd rather read about what's going on in his timeless world through his books than watch the TV so I can hear about what's going on in this world and everybody's opinions about things that don't impact my life. So that's my rant. That's my sociological perspective on how to read more books. Watch less TV, watch less news. I'm not one of those guys that's going to knock video games, but I just think it's about rationing our time. You put a value on your time. I have a video on Facebook. It's called What I Did a Decade Ago That Changed Everything. It's one of the most viewed videos on my Facebook page at Jeff Lerner Official. You should check it out. On it, I basically have video footage of myself from over a decade ago when I was at rock bottom in my life. And I said, and this was on the advice of a mentor at the time, he said, you need to decide what your time is worth. And in that video, I said, I am going to make a radical decision for my life that my time is going to be worth $1,000 an hour. And I'm going to dedicate what I'm doing moving forward to putting the pieces in place and learning the skills and creating the systems and learning from the mentors and doing whatever I have to do to build to where my time could actually be worth $1,000 an hour. And that was an absurd notion at the time. I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I had lost my apartment. First of all, I look a mess. If you go watch the video, you'll be like, that guy, he's not, he doesn't look like anybody whose time's worth $100 an hour, much less $1,000. And I was just in a really down spot in my life, but I got, obsessive about restructuring my life, re-architecting my very existence to provide more value to the world so that it would provide more value to me. I got really, really singularly focused on my world. Since then, granted it was over a decade ago, but I haven't let up. I haven't relented of my focus. And now there's things I do on a regular basis where I get paid well over $1,000. I get paid $25,000 to go into a company and consult for a day. If it's an 8-hour day, that's $3,000 an hour. It's not about having to make $1,000 every hour. Nobody needs to do that, but it's about getting really, really insistent about what your time is worth, and then focusing your life on justifying that statement. It's absurd to say my life is worth $500 an hour, my time is worth $500 an hour, in a professional transaction. If somebody wants to hire me for something, I'm going to charge them $500. They say, well, what do you do? I don't know. I play a lot of PUBG. Why the hell would I pay you $500 an hour? What do you do? What are your skills? What value do you bring to the equation? Okay, well, if you say, well, in the moment that you need me, where you just had a brain aneurysm, I'm the guy that knows how to go in and fix it. Well, shit, I'll pay you $50,000 an hour if I have the money. If I have a brain aneurysm and you're going to save my life, it's just about the value of your skills. What do you know how to do? And your network that gets you to market, and your habits that discipline you to be a person that consistently realizes your value in the world. Network, skills, and habits. That's all it is. And I'm going to suggest that you're going to build a lot more of those for yourself, at least skills and habits, through reading books than watching TV, playing video games, or even browsing on the internet. That's my rant again about reading books. Now let's talk about physical books. I heard a story about the famous writer Stephen King. One of the things Stephen King said was, I forget exactly what the number was, but it was basically that he reads, something like 50 hours a week, or he reads, 200 books a year or something. Anyway, I was reading this article online, which I'm going to suggest I could have been doing something better, but it is what it is. So I'm reading this article about this guy who says, dude, I saw Stephen King in line at the movies, and he was reading a book. He was literally waiting in line to buy his movie tickets with his wife, Tabitha, reading a book, going, hey, here, honey, here's the card, will you get the tickets? Okay. And he walked into the movie theater in the concession line, reading a book, sits down, movie's about to start, previews come on, he's still reading the book. Finally, the movie starts, closes his book, watches the movie. Soon as the end credits roll, picks up his book. The guy was reading all the time. So there's this concept, they call it, they say, oh, you should get 10,000 steps a day, right? Like we have these watches, these smart watches now that count our steps, and say, well, the key to getting 10,000 steps a day isn't to go block off 2 hours and go walk 10,000 steps. It's to just change the way you do the things that you're already doing in this world. Park a little bit further from the grocery store. Take the stairs, not the elevator, right? Just change the way that you do the things that you're already doing. Maybe walk to pick your kids up from school and walk them home. Make it something fun. And then you'll get your 10,000 steps in. In the same way, change the way that you do the things that you're already doing to include reading as much as possible, and you'll change how much you read. Again, I'm not suggesting that we all need to be reading in line at the movie theater, because we're not all going to be the world's most prolific and famous fiction writer. But I'll bet you it goes hand in hand. I'll bet you the reason Stephen King is such a prolific writer is because he's such a prolific reader. And my guess is if you say, what do I really want to do with my life? What are some things I'd like to get better at? What are some things I'd like to change? A lot of them would tie into if I became more fanatical about consuming quality information, processing that information, and taking it in great enough volume that it can actually change you. That's the thing about reading. Reading is like dieting. Eating a protein bar is not going to get you in shape. Changing your macronutrient ratio and consistently adhering to a meal plan for months and months at a time will start to change your body. It'll start to take you in the direction long-term that you want for your physical life. It's the same way with books. Reading a book isn't going to change your life. Becoming a committed, passionate, lifelong reader and letting that habit build you over months and months of your life is going to start to take you in the direction that you want to go for your personal life, your professional life, and your intellectual life. It's that big of a deal. So read on the go. These are some bonus tips. I said I was going to give you 3. I'm going to give you 6. The second bonus tip is to publicly declare to the world. If one of the things that I learned from reading in Robert Cialdini's book Influence is, I think it was the 5th of the 6 principles of persuasion that he tackles. He talks about commitment and consistency. That basically, when you publicly declare to the world something you're going to do, or you do it on public display, it changes you at a visceral level. It changes you at a belief level. And he had some analogies of people who, basically by putting a little sign in their front yard about, don't drink and drive, they became more willing when asked to put a big giant sign in their yard about don't drink and drive than they were if they had just been asked initially to put the big giant sign out, because they'd already taken a step publicly to declare their commitment to that cause. They were willing to take a bigger step in commitment to that cause because they felt hypocritical if they backtracked. One of the examples in the book was about people at a racetrack, and they've done studies on how much more confident people get after they place their bet. That when you place your bet at a racetrack in front of people and you say, I think this guy's going to win, all of a sudden your belief level about who's going to win goes through the roof. That's actually part of the chemical addiction cycle of gambling, is that when you place your bet and people know that you place your bet, usually you don't place your bet in a vacuum. You tell someone, or if you're at a racetrack, you do it publicly. The body actually creates this belief energy, it's chemical. Literally, you become more confident this person's going to win, or this horse or this dog or whatever. And then when they lose, it's an actual tragedy. It hurts you. You have to mourn it. It's almost like somebody died because you had that level of belief that it was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And so the placement of the bet spikes your belief level. Then they lose the race. It crashes your belief level, and that's part of the cycle of gambling addiction that ultimately erodes us at a deep level, is because of an unintended consequence of the effect that happens when you do something publicly. In that same way, tell the world, post it on social media, tell your family, tell your friends, tell somebody that you're making a commitment to reading books. Move the TV out of your bedroom, move the TV out of your living room. They did an experiment where they had people come in and they said, don't eat for 3 hours before the experiment. And people came into the experiment. there were 3 different groups. There was a group that they put in front of them. They said, here's a plate of chocolate chip cookies and here's a plate of radishes. You can eat the radishes, but don't eat the chocolate chip cookies. Second group, they said chocolate chip cookies and radishes, you can eat whatever you want. Third group, they didn't give them any food. They just sat them in a room. So each of these groups spends, I think it was 15, 30 minutes, something like that. They haven't eaten for 3 hours. Then they spend 15 to 30 minutes. Group A can eat radishes, but they have to ignore the cookies. Group B can eat radishes and cookies, and of course they just eat the cookies, right? Group C doesn't have any temptation in front of them, radishes or cookies. Then they have the groups go try to solve a puzzle and see how long they'll last. It was an unsolvable puzzle, but the test was which group will spend the most time trying to solve the puzzle. Guess which group gave up significantly faster than the other 2 groups? It was the group that wasn't allowed to eat the cookies, but had the cookies right in front of them. It was the group that had to sit there for 30 minutes, conjuring the willpower to not eat the cookies. In other words, temptation, the resistance of temptation, is exhausting. It reduces our ability to effectively follow through on other decisions and other commitments, in this case, solving a puzzle. What is that TV? If you say to yourself, well, I'm going to watch less TV, I'm going to stop watching the news, I'm going to fast on Netflix, but that TV is just sitting there day after day. That's the chocolate chip cookies, wearing you out via resistance, via exhausting your reservoir of willpower. They call it ego depletion. It's a psychological process that happens via the consistent exertion of willpower and the resistance of temptation. Ego depletion, basically, it's the Freudian concept of ego. It weakens the ego. The ego is the moderator between your id, your instinctive self that wants to be self-destructive and gorge on cheesecake and have sex with everything that moves, and then your superego, which is your idealized self that's like your best version of yourself, and your ego moderates it. Your ego gets weaker, it gets depleted through the exertion of willpower. So then that part of you that says, well, the moderation between my id and my superego says that I want to be a reader, I want to be a learner, I want to be a doer, I want to be somebody that does what really successful people do. And I heard Warren Buffett reads 60 books a year, so I'm going to be like that. But I'm tired. I'm tired because that TV in my living room is depleting my willpower because I'm having to resist it like a plate of chocolate chip cookies. Get the TV out of your room. It's that simple, right? Hack your life. Make yourself more likely to succeed. That's why you tell people. Commitment and consistency principle says if you tell someone you're going to do it, you're more likely to actually follow through and do it. Okay, so I mentioned a third bonus tip. This isn't really a bonus tip. It's just sort of a note on the difference between audiobooks and books, because it's one of the on physical books and digital screen books. One of the biggest questions I get is, well, do I have to read books? I say biggest questions I get. It's not like people come up to me on the street and say, Jeff, do I need to read books? No. I mean, when I have this particular conversation, one of the natural questions that comes is, do audiobooks count? I'm going to go ahead and say emphatically, yes, audiobooks count. I listen to a ton of audiobooks. Do I count them as a book read? I don't know, probably like 3/4. You know, what's the value of reading a book? I'd say I get 3/4 of the value out of listening to an audiobook. That's still pretty damn good. Still a hell of a lot better than watching TV. But here's why I don't think it's quite the same. When you read a book, and I actually have another video, I think it's inside the Awesome Life Challenge course. So if you've gone through my Awesome Life Challenge is free, so you should go through it. And there's a video in there called Optimizing Your Reading, where I go in depth about exactly what happens in the brain and how it works when you scan your eyes over words and all the switches that have to fire in the brain to convert symbols into language, into meaning, into images. But there's basically 3 main things that are happening when you're reading. First of all, you're having to take symbols and hear them as sounds. Then you're having to take those sounds and you're having to ascribe to them meanings. And you're having to take those meanings and convert them into images. So there's 3 different things that happen in the brain. You create sounds, or you hear sounds in your brain. You have meaning attached to those sounds in your brain, and you have images, visuals attached to those sounds. When you read a physical book, you have to do all 3 of those things. When you listen to an audiobook, one of those 3 things is already done for you. And in fact, the second one, the meaning, is done a little bit for you because of the inflection of the person reading the book. So that's why I say that an audiobook doesn't all the way count, because I don't think it forges the mind quite as much as reading physical books. And I also don't really like reading on screens more than necessary. I do obviously consume a lot of written content on screens, but just in general, if you have the choice between a book and a screen, you should choose the book, because the less time you can spend staring at screens, the better. That's basically the default there. But yeah, audiobooks, I think, remove some of the natural brain conditioning that comes from becoming a consistent reader And that's why, I count it as maybe like 3/4 of a book read to listen to a book. But it's still a heck of a lot better than not reading at all. And I know some people really struggle with reading, and audiobooks are a great way to make up the difference. So, hey, thanks for your time. If you want to have a more awesome life, which is what all my videos are about, all this stuff I talk about, whether it's talking about reading, it's talking about making money, it's talking about relationships, talking about communication, talking about working out, talking about diet, doesn't matter what it's all about. It's about one central focus. My purity of heart is to will one thing for my life and for your life, which is to make it awesome. That's what all these videos are about. So if you're into that, subscribe to my channel. Click the bell so you get notified when new videos come out. And I thank you for your time. I'll see you on the next one.